Chosen one, stop everything. Not later, not after this sentence, now. Because if you leave right now, you will walk away from a truth that explains your entire life. This is not background noise. This is not motivation. This is not coincidence. This moment was arranged. You didn't stumble onto this message. You were guided here. And heaven is not whispering anymore. It is speaking with weight. Listen carefully. There are things God could not release to you before, not because you weren't loved, not because you weren't chosen, but because releasing them early would have broken you. You begged for the breakthrough. You prayed for the door. You cried for the shift. And heaven said, wait. Not to deny you, but to protect you from receiving something your spirit had not yet grown strong enough to carry. This message is not for everyone. It is only for the ones who survived seasons that almost erased them. For the ones who lost people, time, confidence, and certainty, yet refused to lose their soul. For the ones who were misunderstood, overlooked, delayed, and still chose growth over bitterness. That's you. And here is the truth that may unsettle you. Your breakthrough was never delayed by circumstances. It was delayed by capacity. God does not release destiny to unformed character. He does not pour power into unstable identity. He does not elevate hearts that still need applause to feel whole. The waiting was not about timing. It was about who you were becoming. Every closed door trained your discernment. Every betrayal strengthened your boundaries. Every silent season stripped ego from your faith. Every tear deepened your authority. You were not being punished. You were being prepared. Because what is coming into your life will test your humility, not your hunger. Your stability, not your desire. Your obedience, not your ambition. And only now have you become mature enough to receive without self-destruction. Feel that heaviness in your chest? That's recognition. Your spirit already knows this is true. Stay with me, because in the next part, I'm going to show you exactly how God measured your maturity, why the delay was necessary, and how to recognize the moment when heaven finally says, now, they're ready. Stay with me. Because maturity is not what most people think it is. God does not measure maturity by how loud your faith is, not by how many scriptures you quote, not by how desperately you pray for change. He measures maturity by what you do when nothing changes. He watched how you handled disappointment without becoming bitter. He watched how you responded to betrayal without turning cruel. He watched whether pain made you wiser or made you harder. That's how heaven measured you. You see, immaturity reacts. Maturity responds. Immaturity demands answers. Maturity learns to move without them. There were seasons when God stayed silent, not because he wasn't present, but because he was watching what you would do without reassurance. Would you still choose integrity when nobody rewarded it? Would you still choose restraint when revenge felt justified? Would you still choose growth when quitting would have been easier? And you did. Not perfectly, but sincerely. That's why the delay hurts so deeply, because you were growing in ways no one applauded. Now, listen carefully. Your breakthrough required a version of you that could handle elevation without losing humility. Because elevation without humility turns into isolation. It required a version of you that could receive abundance without becoming attached to it. Because attachment turns blessings into prisons. It required a version of you that could stand in authority without needing control. That version of you did not exist yet, so God used pressure. Pressure reveals structure. Pressure exposes weak foundations. Pressure forces growth where comfort would have allowed stagnation. Every season that stretched you was a calibration. Every loss refined your discernment. Every delay trained your patience. You weren't stuck, you were forming. And somewhere along the way, something changed. You stopped reacting the way you used to. You stopped chasing validation. You stopped explaining yourself to people who had no authority over your destiny. You became quieter, stronger, more selective. That's maturity. And heaven noticed, because when maturity arrives, breakthrough no longer feels urgent, it feels safe. In the next part, I'm going to show you how to recognize the exact signs that your maturity is complete and why your breakthrough is now unavoidable. Listen closely. Heaven does not announce release with noise, it announces it with signals. And if you pay attention, you'll recognize them, because you're already living inside a few of them. One of the first signs is this: the urgency left you. Not the desire, not the vision, but the panic. You no longer feel desperate for things to happen. You still want them, but you don't chase them with anxiety. That's not loss of passion, that's maturity. When desperation leaves, alignment enters. Another sign is that people no longer trigger you the same way. Things that once provoked emotional reactions now pass through you without control. You don't need to correct everyone. You don't need to explain yourself. You don't need to prove who you are. Silence became strength. That shift did not happen accidentally. It happened because your identity stabilized. Heaven waits for that moment, because unstable identity turns blessing into chaos. Another sign is this: you've become selective with your energy. You protect your peace without apology. You no longer feel guilty for outgrowing spaces, conversations, or connections that drain you. That's not selfishness, that's stewardship. Maturity understands that what you carry cannot survive constant exposure. Then there's this one, and it's subtle. You started seeing patterns. Not just in others, in yourself. You recognized where you used to self-sabotage, where fear used to make decisions, where emotion used to override wisdom. And instead of condemning yourself, you corrected course. That's growth. That's readiness. Because breakthrough doesn't come to those who never fail. It comes to those who learn. Now hear this clearly. The final sign before release is often pressure without panic. Life feels full, responsibility increases, decisions carry weight, but you're not overwhelmed, you're anchored. That's because heaven doesn't release new levels until your internal structure can support them, and yours can. That's why the season feels different now. The waiting feels quieter. The path feels clearer. The resistance feels weaker. Not because the battle disappeared, but because you outgrew the version of yourself that struggled to stand. In the next part, we're going to talk about what happens when maturity meets opportunity and why once that meeting occurs, delay is no longer possible. There is a moment in every chosen one's life when maturity finally meets opportunity. And when that meeting happens, delay no longer has authority, because heaven only withholds what would collapse you if released too soon. Once collapse is no longer possible, movement becomes unavoidable. Here is the truth. Breakthrough does not arrive when you're ready to receive. It arrives when you're ready to handle. Handle visibility. Handle responsibility. Handle authority. Handle abundance without attachment. Handle opposition without losing peace. That's why promotion never comes with noise. It comes with confirmation. Doors open quietly. Connections align naturally. Opportunities appear without force. And you'll notice something else. You won't feel surprised. You'll feel recognized. Like something you've known all along finally stepped into reality. That's alignment. And alignment feels calm, not chaotic. Now let's talk about why the door opens now. Because maturity changes how you move. You don't rush toward opportunity anymore. You assess it. You don't cling to people for access. You trust timing. You don't compromise values to advance. You let integrity lead. That's why heaven trusts you with more. Because power in immature hands creates destruction, but power in mature hands creates stability. You're not being promoted to impress. You're being promoted to steward, to carry influence without ego, to hold provision without pride, to stand in authority without domination. And here's something important. When maturity meets opportunity, the door doesn't just open. The old door locks behind you. There is no return to who you were, no returning to emotional chaos, no returning to shrinking to fit spaces, no returning to self-doubt disguised as humility. That chapter is over. You didn't lose it, you outgrew it. And this is why resistance intensifies briefly right before breakthrough. Because once maturity and opportunity align, what's coming cannot be stopped, only delayed for moments, not seasons. In the final part, I'll show you how to step into this breakthrough without fear, without pride, and without hesitation. Chosen one, this is where fear releases its grip. Because breakthrough does not require force, it requires positioning. You don't step into this next season loudly. You step into it anchored. Authority does not announce itself, it is recognized. And you are entering a season where what you carry speaks before you do. Here is how you move now. Not with urgency, with intentionality. You no longer chase open doors. You walk toward the ones that feel right, without needing reassurance. You no longer explain your boundaries. You enforce them gently, consistently, without apology. You no longer fear losing what aligns, because alignment does not require fear to sustain it. This is maturity in motion. Now hear this carefully. Breakthrough will test your humility more than your faith. Because when things finally begin to work, the temptation is to rush, to grasp, to secure. Don't. Let flow replace force. What is meant to grow in your life will grow because you're present, not because you're pushing. And if fear whispers, "Don't mess this up," remember this. You didn't survive everything you survived to fail now. The same wisdom that carried you through waiting will guide you through arrival. You are not fragile. You are formed. You are not lucky. You are prepared. And the breakthrough coming into your life will not overwhelm you, because you are no longer who you were. You're steadier now, clearer, more discerning. That is why heaven waited. Because now what is released will remain. Stand here for a moment. Feel the calm in your spirit. That calm is confirmation. If this message resonated with you, pause and acknowledge it. Like this video as a signal, not to others, but to yourself, that you recognize the season you're entering. Subscribe if you feel called to stay connected. What's coming next will build on this foundation. In the comments, write 777 if you're stepping forward with maturity, or 999 if you're closing a chapter that no longer fits who you've become. And before you leave, ask yourself this: what does acting from maturity look like for me today? Let that answer guide your next step. Your breakthrough wasn't late, it was waiting for you. And now you're ready.